Welcome in, Slumpbusters. It is your host, Juju Talk Sports, run, of course, by Kyle Ledbetter. Following the 2020 season, things in Seattle started to get a little bit weird. Russell Wilson stopped being the happy-go-lucky, quiet, go Hawks face of the franchise we've grown accustomed with, even having his agent publicly release a short list of teams he would be open to getting traded to. In 2021, a couple firsts happened since the inception of the Wilson era in Seattle. Firstly, Wilson had never missed time, and ligament damage in his hand caused Russ to miss 3 games in the 2021 season. Secondly, a Wilson-led Seahawks team had never had a losing season. The Seahawks were the only NFC West team to miss the playoffs with a 7-10 record. Now, after that disappointing season, Russell Wilson will no longer be the Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback. Joining us to talk the fallout, the only Seahawks fan that we have an open door policy with at the Slumpbuster, Steezy A. Smith, Kelvin Domingo. Steezy, how you hanging in there today, man?
You know, I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I did yesterday. I don't know if you guys caught my live stream yesterday, but at the top of the show, I was talking about how I woke up to the news. I think it was around 8 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. That was when I fell asleep. And then I woke up 3 hours later around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and my phone literally blown up. You know, texts, phone calls, tweets, Instagram messages, calls, everything. And I was just like, what is going on? And then I'm seeing breaking news from Bleacher Report, ESPN, Fox Sports, and I'm just like, wait, Russell Wilson was just traded? I was heartbroken. I stayed in bed for I don't know how long, and I had a hard time just being able to process everything. And then my show comes around, and at the top of the show, Bobby Wagner gets released, and so I'm just like, I was speechless. My jaw just dropped, and I was just like, you know what? We had a good run. But sometimes you got to take a couple steps backward to eventually move forward.
You talked about taking a couple steps backward. Obviously, this is going to start a full-scale rebuild. So luckily, the Seahawks did get a package back. They got in a package that included Noah Fant, Drew Lock, multiple firsts, multiple seconds. They traded away a 4th back in this deal. Did they get enough to really kickstart the rebuild there in Seattle?
I know I'm going to sound crazy, but me personally, no. And the only reason why I'm saying no is because I'm not saying Denver should have added another first-round pick or 2. For me, when I look at the combination of players that came in, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, none of these guys look like stars. Why couldn't we attain a Bradley Chubb? Why couldn't we get a Pastor 10? Both guys fill not only needs for my Seahawks, but they also play premium positions, cornerback, outside linebacker / pass rusher. And I think with Seattle, while they've made a ton of trades in the past, in acquiring Jamal Adams, Jimmy Graham, Percy Harvin, Jadeveon Clowney, they never really traded for a guy who plays a premium position. Jadeveon Clowney, yes, he's a pass rusher, but he's not any team's number 1 pass rusher. And so Seattle has always had an issue bringing in premium talent via trade. And so now, to me, I find it very ironic that when we do, send out a Russell Wilson, we don't acquire any premium positions. We don't acquire any potential stars. Yes, the first-round pick is going to help, but this is a weaker class, and a lot of people would like to give it credit for, and so especially at quarterback. And so only in that regard would I say Seattle didn't get enough. But aside from that, I mean, it's a major haul, nevertheless. 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th. I guess if I have another gripe about it, why did we have to trade a 4th-round pick? I mean, we didn't have too many draft picks to begin with this year. And we are the ones giving away the franchise quarterback, who I still believe is a top 5 quarterback of football. And so why do we have to give up a 4th rounder? We're kind of splitting hairs with that, but those are my only real 2 concerns with the trade package that came in.
All right. I want to ask you a little bit about the Russell Wilson side of it, because Russell Wilson quietly-ish orchestrated this behind the scenes. The Seahawks didn't want to trade him. Russell Wilson ended up getting his way out. We usually don't see this from the star quarterback type who, in his 30s switches teams, usually in a big trade package also is more interesting. He's the guy in Seattle, I suppose. So how do you feel about how Russell Wilson made out in this situation when he gets out of Seattle and handpicks Denver?
There were reports that I saw earlier this morning that talked about how Russell Wilson felt like his legacy was being damaged. He felt like Pete Carroll was kind of holding him back, and this dynamic between, what he wants and what Pete Carroll wants. These guys are 2 alphas clashing. And so I can't blame Russell Wilson for wanting out, especially because for so many years now, he's tried to convince Pete, and the whole football team, honestly, that, if this is truly my team, like, let the offense run through me. Let me have some say in the offense. I'm not saying, it's full blown, give the keys to Russ, let Russ cook, Russ this, Russ that, Russ this. I'm just saying, he probably didn't feel like he was as involved as he would like. And I just feel like, last offseason, he put out a list of 4 teams that he'd accept the trade to. That's the same as if I had a girl and she listed 4 dudes that she would, get with if she were to break up with me. And so it's like, she's flirting, she's entertaining teams, entertaining other guys. And it's like, for me, I start to see the writing on the wall. I was on record saying that if Russell Wilson was not going to leave this offseason, he was a goner next offseason unless Seattle wins the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's completely out of the realm of possibility. And he ended up moving on this offseason. So it was inevitable. I'm just glad that we have to suffer now just because that suffering isn't going to last forever. So
it definitely seems like there is going to be some suffering in 2022, possibly 2023, possibly 2024. This is going to be a big time rebuild in Seattle. Hell, you not only got rid of Russ, but you talked about Bobby Wagner leaving. So the last piece of that Seattle Super Bowl team is gone. Is this going to be the only trades that Seattle makes? Is there some more possible moves they can make to make this roster better or acquire more assets to jumpstart the next Seattle era in the NFC West?
Oh, this cannot, I repeat, this cannot be the final trade. At least this offseason, just because Noah Pete Carroll, dude is the oldest head coach in the league. He's 71 years old, and he's not going to want to stick around for a full-blown rebuild. Who knows how long that's going to take? Julian, you talked about it might go into 2022, 2023, 2024. We're talking 3 to 4 years. This man is 71 years old. He's running on a different time. He's not out here going to withstand a rebuild. I think that this is more of a reboot, a retooling. There's been rumors that hopefully once Deshaun Watson is able to kind of gain some clarity on his legal situation, maybe the Deshaun Watson part comes into play. Maybe there's another quarterback that becomes available. No, maybe Seattle opts the tank this year because we did acquire Drew Lock. So Drew Lock is definitely going to help in Seattle having one of the worst records in the league. But when you look at next year's draft class, we're talking Bryce Young, we're talking CJ Stroud. And Seattle has 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. So let's say we rebuild and tank for 1 year, and we do have $50+ million in cap space this offseason. So maybe we want to address offensive line. Maybe we want to address running back. Maybe we want to address, more depth in the secondary, linebackers. Guys won't really make a huge impact when it comes to winning, especially with the Drew Lock at quarterback. And so if we're going to rebuild, I think it only lasts 1 year because after this year, Seattle's either going to make a move in the draft or with the top 5, top 3, maybe even the first overall pick, maybe they trade that for an established or star quarterback next offseason.
So is the move for Pete Carroll to kind of wait it out with this contract extension? Because we know that Schneider's under contract for 8 years. Pete Carroll's supposed to be under contract for like 4 more years. Is this I want to be here and see the fruits of the labor, or is like a year from now Pete Carroll going to surprise retire? What do you think the situation is there?
Nah, I don't see that happening. I don't see him staying the entire duration of his contract, but I think Pete Carroll owes Seattle a Super Bowl. I incorrectly said this yesterday on my show, but I talked about how I initially felt that Russell Wilson owed us a Super Bowl, at least another Super Bowl. But then I kind of came to my senses. I kind of had a couple of people telling me that, no, it's actually Pete, because Pete was the one. I know Russell was the one who threw the pick, but Pete was the one who made the call. He was the one who kind of gave and signed off on that pass, that ill-fated pass at the 1-yard line, Super Bowl 49. And so because there is still kind of that stench that has kind of lingered since then, yes, he can't retire, not yet. And especially not after trading Russell Wilson. Like, you're going to go out like that? If you're going to trade Russell Wilson, you might as well retire after trading Russell Wilson. And so I don't envision a scenario in which he retires by next year unless, for whatever reason, Seattle wins the Super Bowl either this year or next, and maybe he wants to ride off into the sunset. But again, that's highly unlikely. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
You mentioned this can't be the only trade. You have quality pieces like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Who's untouchable? Is anyone untouchable in this situation?
At this point, nobody. I hate to say it, but I think the only person who's untouchable, the only person who's safe in Seattle is Pete Carroll. Heck, not even John Schneider is safe, just because Pete Carroll, at the end of the day, yes, he's the head coach, but he's also the executive vice president of football operations. He has final say over all personnel matters, and yes, that includes John Schneider. A lot of people, they don't take that into account, or they kind of miss the fact that while John Schneider is the acting GM, he doesn't have final say over any sort of roster personnel decisions. And so Pete Carroll's the only untouchable. I don't think DK is untouchable. I don't think Tyler Lockett's untouchable. Heck, there were even reports yesterday that Seattle was open to potentially moving to Tyler Lockett And while DK is young enough to anchor and be a part of a rebuild, we don't know if he's going to want to stick around if there's no quarterback. DK, just like Russ, is also about legacy. And so if he's going to spend the next, who knows, however many years of his career in Seattle without knowing that there's going to be a quarterback coming, why would he want to sign an extension now? So I don't think anyone's untouchable but Pete Carroll.
All right. Last question I got to ask you is just less so about the torment of Russell Wilson and the Seahawks and more so torment about Bobby Wagner, because Bobby Wagner is maybe a Hall of Famer and they just up and cut him yesterday. Like they did all of the pain in one day for Seahawks fans, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people were talking about, oh, why couldn't Seattle recoup, at least a day 3 draft pick? Well, I'll tell you what, Bobby Wagner has the highest cap hit amongst all inside linebackers at over $20.35 million. Entering the season, he'll be 32. And yes, while he had 170 tackles last year, if you watch Bobby Wagner play in the last couple of years, you will notice somewhat of a decline, somewhat of a slip in play. And maybe some of that does have to do with scheme. I know Seattle notoriously has been playing so much soft zone. I mean, of course they're going to give up a plethora of yards, but I'm not even pointing to that. I just think athletically, I think when it comes to, his makeup, physically, he's not as fast as he once was. He's not as quick as he once was. He's not able to keep up with some of these shiftier, quicker slot receivers. And so he's definitely taking a step back in that regard. I still think when it comes to stopping the run, when it comes to blitzing the quarterback at the inside linebacker position, he's still top 5. But as it pertains to coverage and some of the other nuances of the game, he's definitely taking a step back. And so on top of that, with the cap hit and everything, there just wasn't a team willing to trade for all that.
Well, Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 is going to be a day that just lives in infamy for every Seattle Seahawks fan. Forever will be known as Black Tuesday for the franchise. I can't wait until I get to see Bobby Wagner in some red and gold. But thank you again, Steezy. Appreciate you for joining us here today. Let the people know where they can find all your quality content, man.
Hey, Julian, thank you so much for having me on, you guys. This was a pleasure. This was fun. And I don't know if you're a guy over there is a 49er fan, but you guys have Fred Warner. You don't need Bobby. I want to see him in the AFC. He's a hater? He's a hater.
I hate everyone. I'm a bitter, beaten former San Diego Charger fan. I just hate everyone and everything. That's pretty much my thing.
Okay, so he just a little salty. Okay, that's I get it. It's all right. It's all right. Hey, but look, my Seahawks, they're definitely in the worst position. I don't know if you're still rooting for the Chargers, but I definitely wouldn't put it past us if we were to get the number 1 overall pick next year, just because things could go that bad. But again, thank you guys so much for having me on. For those of you guys that are tuned in at the Slumpbuster podcast, please subscribe, leave a like, drop a comment, tell a friend, all that good stuff. And once you go do that, then as always, you can find me primarily on YouTube at Steezy Smith, SteezyASmith. Been trying to grow my following on Twitter and Instagram as well. So if you guys can get at me on there, I greatly appreciate it. Nothing but gratitude though, fellas. Thank you.
Go follow this man. Go do it. Steezy A. Smith on YouTube. Go check him out. He said it right there. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.